Greetings and welcome back to our Lexham author interview series. My name is Scott Corbin and I serve on the marketing team here at Lexham Press. I'm pleased today to be joined by Nijay Gupta, author of the New Testament Commentary Guide, a brief handbook for students and pastors. This is the book. Out now from Lexham Press. Nijay is a professor of New Testament at Northern Seminary and the author of many other books and commentaries on the New Testament, and he also blogs at Crux Sola. Nijay, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Scott. Good to be here. Nice to be talking to you.
Great. So this is a excellent little book that I, even as one who kind of is just a little bit conversant in New Testament studies, finds very fascinating. But I love your story behind this book and some other books that you've done and kind of your blogging. And so, why this book? And then why is this book, the New Testament Commentary Guide, so helpful?
Yeah, well, this goes back to kind of my experiences in seminary and kind of navigating being a student. It happens a lot where, I come from, a background where I really didn't know anything about biblical studies, religious studies when I went to seminary. So I was completely lost. And as I learned things kind of word of mouth and from professors and things, I realized there are a lot of people out there who don't know the answers to some questions, and they don't really have people they can ask, or maybe they're really shy about asking. So I started to realize this as I was doing my PhD, and I had all these questions about how to present a paper at a conference or write an article, or what are the best resources for doing research. And I started to collect this information. I started a blog back in 2007, and I just started to kind of give out this information for free about what people told me and kind of what I found were the best ways to do this kind of thing. And so when it comes to a book like this, I do this a lot with my blog. I do this a lot with kind of social media, where I want to kind of publicize and make widely available information that used to be only you could get by sitting down with a professor and talking to them. And I still love it when I talk to my students or talk to people in my office or over the phone or over email. But this is one of those opportunities to give out really important information to a lot of people at once. So I wrote this book really as kind of uh, an expert's guide, or my guide to what are the best of the best when there are literally hundreds and hundreds of commentaries out there. So take something like Romans. Um, Probably 10 commentaries on Romans are published every year. And how can you keep up with that? So, to have someone, and maybe, you could read other guides, but I wrote this one because, I get asked enough. What are the top 3 or 4 in different categories? Because you go to the library and you don't know what to check out, or you want to buy something for a sermon series or Bible study, you don't know what to buy. These are my kind of rough and quick guides with some commentary, just to give people some direction and perspective. And this is I always try to write things that I wish I had when I was a student. And I didn't really have anything like this. There were some websites, but I would have loved to have had this when I was a student.
That's great. And yeah, I love little books like this too. And it's neat because there's lots of notes, it's annotated, you kind of explain, what distinguishes this commentary from a different one. But I'd love to know, there's other books, on books, there's other books on commentaries, other books on the New Testament. What would you say distinguishes yours, this one, New Testament Commentary Guide, from others of those books in that genre?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, a few things that I just wanted to make sure were very important about this book. Number one, it's short. For a reference guide, I feel like to be really helpful, sometimes you just want, give me the bottom line, give me the quick, usually when people ask me for advice, they're asking me over Twitter or Facebook message. They don't want a 3-page answer. They want, a couple sentences. So I just tried to give a couple sentences on, each of the books I recommend, on why I like them. And they're almost like little reviews, kind of like a little Amazon review. I'm not getting into the method or anything really sophisticated. I'm just trying to be kind of punchy and to the point. I feel like that makes it really helpful as a quick guide. So it's written really for students, pastors, lay people who want something quick. Um, I really like books that are visually pleasing. Lexham did a really good job of making this inviting to open up and use. The font, the sizing, all of that is just really nice. Another thing is I want to put in really handy appendixes. So I have kind of a one-stop shop appendix where I just list book by book my recommendations without comment, even though the main book has the comments. That way you can just look up, okay, what does Nijay recommend on Luke or on Hebrews? And then also I have a list, and we can talk about this later, but I have a list of commentaries by women and people of color. And I get asked this all of the time because people want to broaden their horizons. They want to be reading and engaging with different kinds of voices. And they want to be part of a new movement to see a broader guild, a broader field that opens things up more. And I'm sensitive to that as a person of color. I'm sensitive to that as an author. I'm sensitive to that as a professor and a signer of textbooks and a reader. So this was something I was really excited about including in this book. It's not comprehensive because I don't always know how people identify themselves, but I put in as many as I could, and that I feel like is a big draw for this book as well. Now, earlier in the book, I also walked through very briefly things like study Bibles, one-volume commentaries, commentaries by one person like N.T. Wright or John Goldingay or something like that. Um, and I think that's helpful because these things are used a lot, study Bibles. And I can give some of my input and perspective because most people don't know what distinguishes one study Bible from another study Bible. And I've been on the other side of some of these books, so I kind of understand them. And I think just a little bit of insight can go a long way for those kinds of works.
That's great. So actually, that I would love to talk about, that appendix, and also recently you wrote a blog for the Lexham blog, and I think you also posted on Cruxola, where you kind of talk about the importance of broadening perspectives, broadening reading, and why we have to do that, and why that actually will enrich our study of the Bible. And so I'd love for you to kind of like tease out that argument. So I would recommend everyone to go read it because I think it's really well written and a really persuasive case. But I'd love for you to maybe tease out some of those points and why those things matter. And also too, it seems like a lot of people were really excited whenever we like announced the book. It seemed like everyone was like super excited about this. I was like, wow, I really want to check this out. So you should buy the book, instead of just giving those answers away. But yeah, why is that important, and why does that help enrich our study of the Bible?
Yeah, when I talk about the importance of reading diversely, I normally get two strong reactions. Obviously, one is a very positive reaction that people wanting to broaden their horizons. Another reaction is, oh, that's just political correctness. And it's just kind of doing something to kind of punch your liberal ticket. And I admit, probably 20 years ago, I would have been in the I don't care camp, because good writing should be good writing, and exegesis is a science. And so I would have had these reasons to say, we shouldn't bother with doing all this broadening because the best writers are going to rise to the top, and those are the ones we should read. But the more I have been listening and pondering and thinking about this, the more I realize that each of us has a singular perspective. We all know that. And we get, in other areas of life, we realize the advantage of having other perspectives. So you go to the doctor, they give you a diagnosis, and then you might go to another doctor for a second opinion. Why? Because the other doctor may have a different view. And they're going, and you may still take the first opinion, but actually everybody believes that it's healthy and good to have multiple perspectives. And the same is true with the news. You open up a newspaper and you read something, and then now we know better that maybe this newspaper has a bend or a skew, even if they're not trying to. So you read another newspaper, or you visit another website or listen to a different bit of news because you're trying to get a well-rounded perspective. And actually the same goes for biblical scholarship. You think, oh, if someone's talking about the Bible, then if it's the truth, it's the truth. But each of us is going to be drawn to certain things. Each of us has a certain background, a certain training. And we can only benefit from having as well-rounded of perspectives as possible. And the unfortunate reality, Scott, is the curriculum that we've had in seminaries, the textbooks have been dominated by white men. Now, there's nothing wrong with white men. I like to say some of my best friends are white men, but it's been homogenous for a long, long, long time. And it doesn't actually require much of us except thoughtfulness to be thinking about what we're reading and to add in a plurality of voices, not to be PC, but so that we can have a well-rounded perspective, just like we do in other areas of our life.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that, it also exhibits Christian charity whenever we do this as well, because it helps to remind us that, yeah, there's not one perspective that maybe has a corner on the truth, but that there's different aspects, there's different certain things that might be emphasized or de-emphasized that are brought out. And so I think that, it's vital for us, especially as we're seeking to understand and seeking to read the Bible and to understand it more deeply. So that's super helpful. So I think as you've talked about the book, about the layout. I'm just curious, just practically, how would you recommend someone use this book in a very practical way? Do they read it from cover to cover? Do they just reference it whenever they're preaching on something or teaching on something? I'm sure there's a variety of uses of the book, but what would be your recommendation? And two, who's kind of, obviously different people will benefit from this, but who in your mind is kind of the target audience for who you think would really, really profit from this book?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So let's start with the target audience. Um, the people that contact me the most asking about this are seminary students and pastors. Typically people who are leading Bible studies and preaching, and they only have so many hours to prepare a sermon. They want to get the biggest bang out of their buck by consulting the best commentaries that are going to be balanced and accurate, and the scholars are considered to be respected in that particular field. There's certain commentaries that kind of have a classic label to them, like these are the go-to commentaries. And a lot of times pastors and students don't know what those are, but we professors do. So if I can just say, okay, this is, Richard Hayes's Galatians commentary is the best Galatians commentary, in my view, that's really helpful. So that's the target audience. Although sometimes scholars will ask me, since I focus on Paul, they want to know my opinion on the best First Thessalonians commentary. So sometimes scholars will buy these things. The thing I like about this book is it's cheap enough. You can just pick it up without worrying too much about, you know, dropping a massive amount of money on a book. And it could be something that you use once in a while and not always, and that's okay. In terms of how to use it, I would say read the early material, which kind of orients you to my way of choosing things and gives you some sense of how I think about resources. But then, most of the book is just kind of reference oriented, where you just sort of flip to. I don't expect people to read it cover to cover. In the same way, people don't read commentaries cover to cover. I do, but I'm weird that way. But most people don't read commentaries cover to cover. You just dip into the part that you need at the point you need it. But sometimes people will read the whole introduction, and that's kind of what I want with my book as well. It's not a very long book. The introduction is not very long, but that's something that you'll dip into. Another way to use it is I have little notes in there that say "own this," meaning this is the one I would buy for each book in the New Testament. Maybe someone's building a library. Maybe you just go through, look for those, and you buy those. That is a good practice if you're just starting to build your New Testament library.
That's great. And I love books about books. I like working books. I'm around books all the time. So I always find it really interesting, even if it's a subject that maybe I'm not as familiar with, but just anytime there's conversation about books or kind of imputing some knowledge in that way, I find them super fascinating. So like I said, the book is great. I've looked at it and love it, but I'd love to hear, if you were to give someone a pitch and they were to say, okay, I've got, $20 to buy one book. Why should they use some of that money to get and what's your elevator pitch for why people should get the New Testament commentary guide?
Yeah, my pitch would be, you take a bookstore like Powell's City of Books here in Portland, or Amazon, christianbook.com, bookshop.org, and there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of commentaries on there. And people struggle with figuring out which are the ones that are going to benefit me the most when I'm doing Bible study, preaching a sermon, personal edification, group study. My book is designed to make that easier and to help you make the best choices, and that will help you hopefully save money. But for much of it, for me, it's about saving time on ordering all these books or looking around and trying to read book descriptions. And I kind of give you my rough and dirty quick guide to these commentaries so that you can just order those 3 or 4 from the library and be on your way in research and not be thinking a whole lot about choosing out of the 300 commentaries for that particular book.
That's great. Well, again, the book is the New Testament Commentary Guide. Nijay, thanks so much for joining us, and I hope people check it out.
My pleasure. Thanks, Scott.